About Hitler. I mean, what did you ever see Hitler, or
I think one time I saw him in Nuremberg.
like a parade or something?
That was very brief. It was a parade, yeah.
Oh, so you'd be like in the car driving by?
Yeah. And I did see a tank, some tanks going through town with heavy cables. And they put these cables around the synagogue, which I didn't know what they were doing. And they put the cable, and they pulled the synagogue apart. On a Sunday, we didn't work. Whatever happened there, we didn't work. So we used to go for a walk. So outside of Munich, I come across this big fenced-in area with barbed wire, razor wire, and there's people behind it. And the guy talks to me in German. Naturally, I spoke German. He said, "Bitte helfen Sie mir, geben Sie mir ein Stückchen Brot. He wanted a piece of bread." And I told him in German, I said, "Look, I'm stationed at the barracks. We get a bowl of soup, and that's it. I don't have any bread. I'm sorry." And I found out later that was Dachau.
Dachau.
That was Dachau.
I mean, what was German schooling like?
I'm sorry, I wish you wouldn't have reminded me. I went to a school, and this teacher, normally you stay in one class all the time, you know, if it's history or whatever it is, you stay with that teacher. Well, this miserable soul, during World War I, the Americans, he was a soldier. They shot the top of his head off, and he had a silver plate. Well, he hated Americans. I don't need to tell you that. And for openings every morning, he beat me bloody. For closing times, he beat me bloody. How do you think I got my nose like this?
So he knew you were an American?
Yeah, sure he did. Yeah, everybody knew in town. He beat me bloody. I saw these planes coming back and diving down. And the guy turned around. He came back. On top of that mountain was a German field hospital. And that's what it was. It was German soldiers with arms shut off or frozen off, you know. They were in, and these guys intended to shoot at that hospital. Bomb it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they missed. They hit that mountain where my mom was in. Well, all 350 people got killed. My two little brothers, my mom, and all the rest of the people. My cousin, my niece, they all got killed. End of the war, April 16th.
Yeah, only 2 or 3 weeks to go. Mm.
And I stopped him, I showed him my birth certificate, I still have it. And it wasn't actually a birth certificate. It was just that my birth had been recorded in Newark. It had the big golden seal of Newark, but nobody read any further. They presumed it was my birth certificate. And that's all the captain must have said to his chauffeur. He says, "I think that SOB is an American." He said, "Let's load him up, take him with us." That's how I got out of Berlin.
So what happens to you if you didn't run into the?
That would have been a good question. I would have been stuck with the Russians.
No, and so that
And what they would have done to me, God only knows.
okay.
Well, ask me what you want to ask me, Chuck.
Well-
I don't know what you want to get into.
What-
Railroads.
Well, you could, well, let's talk about you, and then we can talk about railroads too.
Okay.
So you're born in Newark.
I was born in Newark. I grew up in a state called the Eifel. And before the war, the Americans used to come there. We were very famous for these warm lakes that helped your arthritis, which I kind of wish I was there. It might help, you know. But the Americans used to come there and take their baths there.
So when is that?
That was in
before the war, obviously.
Well, before the war, yeah, in the 30s? No, let's see, 30, I would have been only a year old. It was around, I remember this 30, I was about, what was I? 30, around 39, I'd think, yeah.
So you're born in what year?
29.
29.
Christmas Day,
29.
25th December 1929.
So your parents are from Germany. They
Yeah, my
do you know
mom
when they
was-
came to the U.S.?
She was from the Black Forest, and my dad was out of this state called the Eifel.
Eiffel. Okay.
He came over here because he had to escape the French.
Why did he have to escape the French?
Well, during World War I, my state was always French occupied because the French always wanted the coal mines and all of that. But after the war, the French occupied my state and my town, and my dad and some of his buddies, they went and burned down the city hall and the French flag, which was not a good thing because the French, I think they shot 2 of them, killed 2 of them. Some of them escaped to Brazil, and my grandma packed my dad up to send him to the States.
Uh-huh.
So he came to the States. He just about made it.
Now, were there anyone else in the family that was over here at that time? Or did he was just
No,
sent
he
over
met-
here?
He met my mom here. He had a butcher shop on Bergen Street. And,
In Newark.
yeah, in Newark, on Bergen Street, yeah. And, well, my grandma talked him back into coming back home after the war, and she said she'll open him a butcher shop and a slaughterhouse. Well, he went for it, and he got himself killed on a motorcycle in my town because he used to race them things.
Now, when is this? Because you go back.
I wish I would have known. I would have brought the paperwork with me and some pictures.
Well, that's okay. It's a long time ago. So, but so you're born in 29. Do you know roughly when your parents take you back to Germany?
Oh yeah, in 30s. My sister was born in Germany. She was a year younger than me.
She was born in Germany.
So it was 1930, I guess, right? I would have been back in Germany.
So you spend very little time as an infant here in the U.S.
None whatsoever.
So that would be right at the beginning of the Depression. Now,
Yeah, it was the Depression. Yeah.
Was the butcher shop not doing well in Newark? What do you think?
No, he had no intentions of going home. But she conned him and coming home.
This is who?
His mom. His
mother, okay. So, does he get a butcher shop in Germany?
Oh yeah, he had a big slaughterhouse and butcher shop.
Okay.
My mom bought the butcher shop, like all the women did then. You see them down here in that butcher shop. The women always serve you, wait on you. And he did the slaughterhouse.
So that I guess then that does well, but how?
I think it did, until he got himself killed on a motorcycle.
And that was when? Any guess? Somewhere in the 30s? Did he?
It had to be, yeah.
Okay.
The funny part is, the day before I went with him, because he had a sidecar he used to snap on the bike, he took me with him. We went somewhere in the country. We came back, and the next day he went out again, but he disconnected the sidecar, and I wanted to go with him. He says he can't take me with him, which meant to me that he was racing. That's what I think. And I know the place where he got killed. Right in town, outside of town, by a big curb. And there's my nephew that was here. He used to be he was manager of that. We get that natural seltzer out of the ground. There was a big factory there. That's where he got killed.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, we get that natural seltzer right out of the ground, but it's sweet seltzer. Yeah.
So then it's your mom who has to raise you guys.
She did, yeah.
She did.
Yeah, she became a chef up in the barracks where the German soldier officers were stationed. And she used to cook for them because she was a very good chef. And she wasn't the only one. There was several Germans that cooked there for the German for the officers.
So what happens to the butcher shop and the slaughterhouse?
Well, and I think one of his helpers took it over for a while. And then somehow it closed. I don't know why, what happened there. But I used to hang out in the slaughterhouse. We used to play in there, They had the ropes where they hung the cows and all that,
So is that where you kind of got your because I remember times when we first come over to your house back in the 1970s, and you'd be cooking all sorts of things.
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to do my own cooking, but I'm not eating anymore. Billy's pushing me to eat.
You used to eat all sorts of
Weird stuff.
weird stuff, yeah.
I still do.
You still...
If you give me a turkey neck and the wings, the gizzards, the heart, I'll be very happy.
Did you do the brains too?
The brains, the calf brains, yeah. Love them, sauteed.
Okay.
That gourmet, that fancy gourmet who has all these restaurants. Well, he has a restaurant in New York, and he makes, you can't buy them anymore, calf brains. Nobody would sell them. He has a way to get, he must have his own slaughterhouse. He has the sauteed brains. And you know what he gets for them?
No.
The dinner's about $150.
Really?
Yeah. They're not cheap. If you know how to saute it, which I like, saute.
Okay, well, I guess it's not you're I'll say you're unusual, because I would say that's probably not something that most people would eat. But
No, I could. I go with Billy to a store, the Clover meat market. I buy turkey necks, I buy wings, and maybe the thigh, the legs,
Okay.
and I can live on that. But actually, I'm more of a seafood person. Lobster, crabs, crab legs, clams, mussels. That's why I like the Chinese buffet.
So where did you pick that up? Because I think of in Germany
Yeah,
that
but
you probably wouldn't see much seafood.
never. I saw one time my uncle used to go to one of them lakes and get the mussels, right? And some, what do you call the little fish, smelts. Well, he had them. He had a whole big pot full of smelts. So my friend and I, he swiped the frying pan, I swiped the fish and the butter, and we went over in the woods. On a was a big mountain, right? We sit up there and we cooked them smelts. And the cop, he was a neighbor of mine. He watched us through the binoculars. Well, no telling you, no saying. You know, him and I, we burned the woods down. We had the woods on fire. But finally, it got out.
So what's your earliest memories from Germany? Because you would have no memory here because
No, I remember my dad for a little while, and then he got killed. That was it.
So you're maybe 5 or 6?
Yeah,
or,
I think so. About 5 or 6, you know. So, and we lived in my grandma's house, and yeah, my grandfather, he was the chief engineer for the Kaiser on the railroad.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. He chauffeured the Kaiser run everywhere where he had to go.
Now the Kaiser, of course, there are no Kaisers at some point.
No, not anymore.
Right, but what happens? I mean, you during this whole time, of course, you and your folks go back to Germany. You for the first time, of course, and the Nazis take over at some point.
Yeah.
But you're probably much too young to remember any of that. But at some point, when you're growing up, what kind of
You don't
presence did they
understand.
have?
Hitler recruited kids his size. They were in the army. They became officers. You know, listen, nobody has any conception what he did. The Hitler Youth, what do you think they did? They trained with guns. That was it.
Now you were never part of that, or you were
I was an American. They wanted to recruit me to go to the French border and shoot Americans. But my mom stepped in and stopped that. So.
Now, do you? Because you wouldn't. When did you learn English? Because you're obviously speaking German, but you
When I came back over here, I went to a school in Irvington, Mount Vernon. They put me in there just to learn English mainly, you know.
So how do you or do you have to? Well, I guess they know, or at least your mom knows that you were born in the U.S. But how do you prove to anybody else, especially like we'll talk maybe a little bit later on about?
I had my birth certificate.
Oh, you carried it around with you?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
That's what got me out of Berlin.
That's what I'm wondering, how you did that.
I was in Berlin. Most Germans, Hitler handed them one of these Panzerfaust. You know what that is, right?
No. What is it?
Really, tell them what a Panzerfaust is.
It's an anti-tank weapon.
It's a weapon with a big grenade in the front to shoot at the Russian tanks when they came in. But he put me digging ditches on the other side of Berlin. He figured the Russians are going to fall in the ditch. He didn't figure they had bridges and things to shoot across and come across. And I got out of Berlin. The Americans started coming in. They went into Berlin because Patton didn't want to give the land Berlin to the Russians.
Hmm.
He was very obstinate. He recruited some German soldiers, and he was going to go into Russia till Hitler's, till Truman stepped in, you know.
Right.
But
That would have prolonged the war,
I
to say
was
the least.
able to get out of, come back out of, I was on the other side of Berlin. I got through into Berlin, got the other side, and there was an American captain, you know, with a chauffeur. And I stopped him, I showed him my birth certificate, I still have it. And it wasn't actually a birth certificate. It was just that my birth had been recorded in Newark. It had the big golden seal of Newark, but nobody read any further. They presumed it was my birth certificate. And that's all that captain must have said to his chauffeur. He says, I think that SOB is an American. He said, let's load him up, take him with us. That's how I got out of Berlin.
So what happens to you if you didn't run into the?
That would have been a good question. I would have been stuck with the Russians.
Oh, and so that
And what they would have done to me, God only knows. God, who knows where if somebody would have read English, because they didn't like Americans either, you know.
Mm.
Patton wanted to do the right thing and annihilate the suckers.
So there's some luck there that you have, that you're
Very, very lucky, very lucky.
So what happens? Well, you know, before we get to that, because I know we'll talk about what happens to you, how you get to the U.S. But when you tell us a little bit about growing up, when you know, like.
Well,
I mean, you went through school.
I was a rascal, you know. You talk about Dennis the Menace with a slingshot. I didn't go anywhere without my slingshot. My friend's father, he had a beautiful, the only one I ever saw with golden, delicious apples. And I was a maestro with the slingshot. If I wanted an apple, boom, I get that apple with my slingshot. And naturally, he'd come out screaming bloody murder. He'd get out of my apples, you know, in Germany.
Did you use the slingshot on anything else other than apples, or?
Well, I don't remember shooting animals, no. I shot at targets, you know.
Okay.
Rocks or whatever, pick out a rock or something, you know.
So you had pretty good aim, I take it.
I like my slingshot.
So what about school? I mean, what was German schooling like?
I'm sorry, I wish you wouldn't have reminded me. I went to a school, and this teacher, normally you stay in one class all the time, you know, but it's history or whatever it is, you stay with that teacher. Well, this miserable soul, during World War I, the Americans, he was a soldier. They shot the top of his head off, and he had a silver plate. Well, he hated Americans. I don't need to tell you that. And for openings every morning, he beat me bloody. For closing times, he beat me bloody. How do you think I got my nose like this?
So he knew you were an American?
Yeah, sure he did. Yeah. Everybody knew in town. He beat me bloody. The funny thing is, after the war, I was stationed in Munich, ready to come to the States, but I went to see my grandma because she's clean across the country. I was stationed in Munich, and it was a German signal barracks. That's where we were. All the people was going. We were waiting for a boat to come in, which never came in. It took time and time. They said, well, go see your grandma, which I did. I went to see her. I saw my grandma, and the captain, there was an American captain, and even though it was French sector, they had certain amount of American troops stationed there. And the captain came, and they knew I was American. He asked me if anybody mistreated you. So I went I said, let me think about that. He spoke German. I went home, I told my grandma, I said, Grandma, they're asking me who abused me during the school days. And I said, well, you know, Mr. Wolfgang beat me bloody. She said, she went up there, oh, Willie, please, don't do anything, don't report him, you know. I says, well, let me ask you this, Grandma, where were you and my mom? When I came home with bloody noses every day, where were you to help me? I said, nobody helped me. I got beat bloody every single day from that bum. Mr. Wolfgang, never forget him.
So what happens to him? Do you tell them about him? Or?
No, I didn't. She asked me not to do.
Well, where would he have been? What would have happened if you had?
Well, they would have arrested him.
Was he still in the area?
For mistreatment of an American. Yeah, he was a school teacher.
Still, though, at that time.
Huh?
At that time, though, still.
I don't know what happened to him. I didn't report him.
So as the war, now this is towards the end of the war we're talking about right now,
Yeah.
or at the very end of the war, basically.
Yeah.
1945.
The war was over, yeah.
So, but what is it like as because are you in Berlin for a long period of time, or I mean?
I don't remember how long it was, Chuck. All I know, I was digging ditches. They handed me a spade and they said, start digging.
And this is when bombs are dropping and all that stuff.
Everything was going loose. Yeah.
What did you guys do during an air raid? Were you still out there, or did you like go into a shelter? What did you do?
Well, we go in the house cellar. We always had these stone cellars, you know, where we kept potatoes and beets and all that, you know. Well, what happened at the end of the war, toward the April 16th, the war was over in May 8th. The war was over. April 16th. We were all up my grade. They had the air raid sign go off. We saw the planes going that direction. I think they went to Kassel. They bombed Kassel. And coming back, the air raid went off again. So my mom and two little brothers and a niece, they ran up into the mountain. There was a guest house, and the German, he kept his beer into these mountain cellars, right? They were on a railroad thing, and it went deep into the mountain, and I think that cellar, it had 350 people in there. Well, I started running too. I think I had an operation. I couldn't run as fast. I started running after them. We went through the field, and they got into the thing, and I saw these planes coming back and diving down. And the guy turned around. He came back. On top of that mountain was a German field hospital, and that's what it was. It was German soldiers with arms shut off or frozen off, you know. They were in, and these guys intended to shoot at that hospital, bomb it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they missed. They hit that mountain where my mom was in. Well, all 350 people got killed. My two little brothers, my mom, and all the rest of the people. My cousin, my niece, they all got killed. End of the war, April 16th.
Yeah, only 2 or 3 weeks to go.
But these guys, I do have the writing home, which Air Force it was, which troops it was. You know, I have it. And my pastor, I think he was in the Air Force, he's looked it up and see who it was. You know, he says, yeah, they might still be around, who knows. But he says, Bill, let it rest. Everybody always tells me, Bill, let it rest, you know. And he, well, that's how she
So both parents.
Well, my dad got killed.
Right, he
Oh,
died
my
in the-
mom remarried. She married a German officer. And he was stationed in Stalingrad, right? And he came home they gave him a furlough. And they notified him under furlough. He used to report somewhere nearby there. And he had to go to the island of Crimea. What do you call it? Crimea?
Crimea, yes.
Well, they needed officers there. So he was being transported to the, and he was one heck of a nice man. I loved that man, I really did. I loved him. And he was not a Nazi, he was a soldier, infantry. Well, he went to the Crimea, and that's where he's missing.
So he was never found, or was this a missing in action?
But the Russians, when you're missing, you stay missing.
Oh, okay. Well,
And then when I, after the war, well, like I say, I was stationed in Munich because I was an orphan, so they were going to ship me to the United States. Keep in mind, I'm 17 years old. They want to send me out for adoption. Well, luckily, when I got here, I found my aunt's address, and they called her, and she came to Ellis Island to pick me up.
really? Okay.
Yeah. I set up there. They forgot about me. I had a picture. It was in the newspaper, and there's the upstairs in Ellis Island. There's a bench. I said, man, that is the bench I was sitting there, and I was looking at comic. I couldn't read them, but I looked at comic books, And finally, they called somebody, a policeman. He spoke German, and he called my aunt. I had that address, and they asked her, "Are you so and so?" Yes. Well, we have somebody here who's your nephew. Would you be able to come and pick him up? Well, she sent her son-in-law to come and pick me up in Ellis Island. They forgot about me. They let me sit there.
So you end up. Where was she living at that point?
Who?
Your aunt.
In Irvington.
Irvington. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's where you learned English.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when the war was over, I went to see my grandma because they said the ship wouldn't be in for a long, long while. They don't know which ship is going to take us to the States. As it was the SS Purge. So, but anyhow, I go to see my grandma. Now, and it was French sector, right? Keep that in mind. And they take a German and make him mayor. And this bum they put for mayor, he went to school with my father. He knew that. Well, I'm there. They called me up to the town hall. And I had to surrender my travel paper. And he wanted to hold me for what my father did. They wanted to hold me responsible for what he did. And, well, I went back home to my grandma. I didn't have a travel visa now. I still had my birth certificate with the gold seal from the States. But I went, what was I? What was I going to tell you? Oh, then I went back to grandma. Now, there was, like I told you, a certain amount of American troops stationed with the French. Well, they had a soccer game going, and they had a big fight. And this American captain, he shot a Frenchman. So he had to take a powder. They wanted to arrest him. He took a powder. And he got to my town. And he saw an American chief sitting there by the house. It was my friend's house. These Americans used to come and see his sister, right? Well, anyhow, They go in there and ask them, they said, I'm a captain and I need to get back to my base. And they said, you can't come with us because the French inspectors every night, every time we come home, we're being inspected. You can't even hide in the jeep because they turn everything upside down. They said, well, we know one thing. There's a young man lives down the street with his grandma. He's an American. Maybe he can hide you for a while. That's what I did. I hid him up in the barn. My grandma wasn't happy. Nobody was happy. And somebody thinked on me that I hid an American. Now they really canceled all my leaves. I'm not to leave town. They arrested me, house arrest. So that soldier, he looked up maps. I don't know what he did because I couldn't speak English, but he looked up maps and he laid out a route which way he's going to go. So he was hiking through woods and whatever, I guess, you know.
What, to get away?
But he packed a 45, you know. Yeah, to get away, to get back to either get back to his base or get to an English sector. Because he had English, French, and Americans, and the Germans, naturally. So he must have made it back there, and I was under house arrest. I was not allowed to leave the town. Well, thank you to my grandma, what she did to my father, World War I, she put him on a train to get to the United States. And she put me on a train, and I got as far as the Rhine-Main base. And here's the English, the French, and Americans. They inspect. But on this side, it was all French with a German-speaking guy, right? They asked for your travel pass, which I didn't have. They took it away from me, right? I said, oh man, I had a American uniform on because I was stationed at the base. So they come to me, German guy says, Pass. I made believe I couldn't speak German. I went like this. Pass bitte, pass, you know, you wanted my pass. Nix. So, he's talking to the French guy in French, and I pulled out that birth certificate with the gold seal. I showed it to them. Now they're totally confused. The French is looking to the German. Neither one of them could read it. But they presumed it was a pass. They said, Einstein, you know, go back on the train. And I got in the English sector on the other side of the Rhine-Main base. Oh, I said, Lord, you've been with me today.
And what happens after that? So you're
Well, after that, I went back to Munich, you know. And because that's where I was stationed, in Munich.
Now you're stationed with the Americans, or what?
No, there was a...
Because you have an American uniform. How do you end up with an American uniform?
Yeah, a nephew of mine. He was a prisoner. He gave it to me.
So it's not really an official...
No.
Okay, so you were just wearing it. So.
But, this was a barracks that the German Signal Corps used to own. And they stationed all the people that's going to go to the United States. They had Jews, Russians, whatever. You know, you're disabled, you're going to the United States, and that's where I had a room. So I went back to that base, and a boat came, I think, shortly afterwards. So we all got on the boat and went.
So you go to the United States.
SS Purge, yeah, took us out. And the funny part is, one year I went with this mom, we're going up to, what is that with the soldiers what's this? Up on the Delaware River.
You're talking about West Point.
West Point, yeah.
Oh, up in the Hudson.
We're driving up, yeah, along the Hudson. We're driving up there to go to West Point to see the parades, and we see all these boats tied up, you know, that they're gonna, whatever they're gonna do with them. And I had my binoculars, and we're looking, and sure enough, there was that boat tied up that brought me over, the SS Purge. Yep.
Big ship, or is it?
It was a troop ship, yeah.
Okay. So what's the trip like over? Is it a smooth trip, rough trip, or do you have any recollection of the trip at all?
Yeah,
Going across the Atlantic.
I was mostly up on deck. I didn't get seasick. I like the ocean,
Oh, okay.
so I don't have any problem
Because
with that.
not everybody does well on the ship, you know.
No, I did very good on the ship. Yeah, I was very happy on the ship.
So you go past the Statue of Liberty on the way in, or
Yeah.
Okay,
And,
the whole-
I got off on
in Ellis Island, right?
Ellis Island. That's where they forgot me.
Because they weren't using Ellis Island at that point, I don't think. Maybe at that point they had to, but
Oh no, they had everybody came through there.
you came through
And
Ellis
they
Island.
had certain bins for people that were being shipped back. They couldn't get off.
So what, for some reason they weren't being allowed
Yeah,
off?
I don't know what the reason. Mine, I always had a tag U.S. You know, I had to.
But you also had that paperwork, which
Yeah,
is golden.
yeah. That was gold then.
Yeah, I mean, because if you had lost that, I don't know what would you have done.
Yeah. You know, I told you one of my favorite uncles. He was heavy and big time into Nazis. He didn't meet too often. I don't know what he did, but he was a engineer for the railroad. And it must have been, I don't know what time of the work, part of the work was, but anyhow, he was driving a troop train. And these Americans came, boom, boom, machine gunned the train. And you know, the first thing they, like Billy said, they aimed for the tank. And they tried to get the engineer. And that's how he got killed.
Oh, and
Yeah,
what
that-
happens to the troop train? Because if the engineer's
It's a
dead.
good crash. I don't know what happened to it.
Now you say he.
But I think it derailed.
Oh, okay, because he did it.
And my friend and I do think, him and I'm not sure, I think we derailed the troop train coming from France going into Russia. I think we derailed it. We put heavy spikes on the tracks. It's mischief, you know, like him, we're doing mischief.
But whose army? I mean, which army was on the train?
German.
German. Oh, okay.
Coming from France going to Russia.
I see.
Yeah.
And how you had to get away from that because
Oh,
they
we
would have
were-
been looking for you.
We ran like the Dickens, believe me. Him and I, we ran. Him and I, we got always in trouble, you know.
So when during the, how do I ask this question? Concentration camps and people, I'll say disappearing. Did anybody that you remember growing up with, like
Yeah,
neighbors and stuff, that would, you know, that, or at least you found out later that they
Well,
got
the
taken
Germans
away?
used to ship me all over with my welding tanks. I was a welder then,
Uh-huh.
right? And I used to have to go wherever they bombed a railroad. If the rails stuck up, they couldn't untangle them. So you go with a cutting torch and cut the sucker, you know. So that's what I did. But I was stationed in Munich. And on a Sunday, we didn't work. Whatever happened there, we didn't work. So we used to go for a walk. So outside of Munich, I come across this big fenced-in area with barbed wire, razor wire, and there's people behind it. And the guy talks to me in German. Naturally, I spoke German. He said, "Bitte helfen Sie mir, geben Sie mir ein Stückchen Brot. He wanted a piece of bread." And I told him in German, I said, "Look, I'm stationed at the barracks. we get a bowl of soup, and that's it. I don't have any bread. I'm sorry. And I found out later that was Dachau.
Okay.
That was Dachau.
Now, what did you think at the time was going on? Because were there both men or women and children there, or only men?
I had no idea what was going on and why they were in there. But I do know there was hundreds of people on the other side of the fence, and this one guy reached his hand out. He said, "Ein Stückchen Brot, piece of bread." I said, "I can't help it. I don't have any. All we do, I'm stationed in a camp down there, and all we get is a bowl of soup." That was it. Now, that's all I knew about the camps. I never had any idea.
Even like rumors of people disappearing or nothing, really?
The one thing I do remember, my dad had that butcher shop, right? This before the war. And he shared the butcher shop with a Jewish person. He had one section where they had that Jewish food,
Like kosher?
Kosher, yeah. One time they came by, they picked up the Jew, never to be seen again. And I did see some tanks going through town with heavy cables. And they put these cables around the synagogue, which I didn't know what they were doing. And they put the cable, and they pulled the synagogue apart. That's all I know.
So of course you find out later on, of course, that maybe after the war, what was really going on.
What went on. Everybody found that out, that he killed all the Jews, Not only Jews, he killed the Germans, gypsies.
There was a whole list of groups that they targeted, and they were put into camps. And
if it didn't suit him, they went into camps. Gypsies, and if you were a communist, that's why I don't understand how my father's friend survived in Germany. They made him mayor, and he was a communist. How did he ever survive? Because Hitler rounded up all communists.
Unless he had really good connections.
Unless nobody ever knew that he was.
Maybe, yeah, because
he kept that very secret,
About Hitler, I mean, did you ever see Hitler, or
I think one time I saw him in Nuremberg.
Like a parade or something?
That was very brief. It was a parade, yeah.
Oh, so you'd be like in the car driving by?
Yeah.
What about you're growing up in Germany. Of course, now we're talking about you're in your early teens now, for the most part, or mid-teens. So you're a young kid.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering what kind of impression this makes upon you. I mean, because I know as an American, you've been mistreated, or because of just being American. But
that alone was no good. But most kids his age, they were in the army. There was no two ways about it. You saw them.
From what age about? What did they draft you or put you in the Hitler Youth or whatever?
11.
Wow. Okay.
They carried a gun. They were trained with guns. Well, matter of fact, in my school, they were teaching you how to fly gliders. They put that glider on top of the mountain, and then the rest of the school kids pull you down, and everybody had to do it. Well, I said, Lord, if I ever get my feet back on the ground, you're never going to get me up there. You don't go far, and it's just, they pull you and you go down.
Wouldn't have been the plan though. You'd be like, was that like practice? And
It was practice. I guess it was practice.
because they, you know, and if in a real, I'll call a real glider, of course they have a tow line and they get pulled up into whatever a couple thousand feet.
These were the school kids towing you down the mountain, and they let you go, and you fly maybe, who knows, maybe from here to down the mountain. You know, that's
So
it.
a few hundred yards maybe.
Yeah, maybe that.
So was it? This was for fun, or this was there actually? This sort of practice.
I don't never know what it was. I thought it was a fun thing. It's supposed to be for the school, but it was actually training them for flying,
Okay.
which I would have never made. Then I came over here in the 40s, 50s.
Well, you come here right after. How far? The war ends. You know, May of '45. How long do you think it takes before you are on that ship? You know, for the U.S.
No, I came over here in 45.
So you're okay. So it's sometime shortly
Yeah,
thereafter.
yeah.
Okay. So a whole bunch of people are coming over. You know, troops and stuff. Like my father was stationed over in France at this point. He comes over. And I think he's in France until at least August of 1945, and then he comes home.
Yeah.
So it's about the same time.
Yeah, about the same time.
A lot of people are coming. A lot of troops are coming back home.
Yeah, I think there were even soldiers on that ship, you know. But the first time I ever saw real food down the cafeteria
What cafeteria was that?
On the ship.
On the ship. What do you mean real food? I mean, what?
Oh, well, I never had food. We didn't have any food.
What? Well, when you come back to when you're very young and you had the book your father has a butcher shop and you're not eating, or what's what?
You mean in Germany during the war?
Yeah.
No, we had no food. There was absolutely no food.
Really?
All the food they had when we went to Russia. Oh no.
So the average German's starving?
You close to it. We stood in line for a lousy piece of bread. You got that maybe once a week. And then if you were not so lucky, the American, what do you call them, they came by, machine gunned the people, stand in line. So if you split and you gave up your bread for that day, you couldn't get it back.
And so you had to survive on bread and water, basically, or?
Yeah, birch trees. Tree.
You mean like the bark or whatever?
The bark, No, we had no food. Nothing.
So you end up, you go to this cafeteria. What's that like to see? I don't know what.
Ooh, well, they had all different kinds of food there. They had stews and whatever, and bread. We didn't see any bread, you know. But I didn't know. The Americans, you always have white bread. To us, that was cake, you know.
Rye bread was cake. Oh, okay. So you come to the U.S. You're what, 15, 16?
17.
17. Okay, 17. In Irvington.
Yeah.
What? So you learn English. How long does that take? I mean, how long are you?
Yeah, I think it was a fairly quick learner, you know.
So what do you do? You're going
Now
to.
this lady, this teacher, she was German. She actually spoke German. She helped me, you know. Never forgot her, Mrs. Care. Yeah, she helped me along. So I don't think it took me too long to learn English.
Now, how do you? One thing I forgot to ask you, and that, how do you pronounce your last name?
It's ANSCHU,
Umlaut?
2 little dots, the umlaut, TZ. But the American way is UE.
But how do you pronounce that?
Anschuetz.
Anschuetz. Now, I remember in a previous conversation, that is not to be confused with. There's a Jewish variation.
That'd be Schwitz.
Schwitz.
Anschwitz. If they would in Germany call me Anschwitz, that would have made me Jewish.
But you're on Schutz,
Schutz.
so it's a very subtle difference, but
Well,
important
yeah, they were
difference.
famous gun makers. So,
Did you ever have to make sure that people understood that?
no.
No, really. Okay.
No, in my town, everybody knew. We were a big family.
Well, what I mean is, whenever you're going around, you have to be careful about your pronunciation. Is that so? Is that subtle difference that you could be, I'll say, by mistake, or
Yeah.
be
By
confused
mistake,
with
you call
being
me
Jewish?
Anschwitz. That'd be very dangerous ground, you know.
So you knew that though. Yeah, that must have been drummed into you at some point. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but when you come to the U.S., I would think probably less of an issue, but still, you're. So what
Well,
do you
when
do?
I came over here, the first thing, I learned English. I didn't learn it too good yet, but I always liked water, so I enlisted. I went down to enlist in the Navy. In them days, because the war was over, they laid off soldiers. They didn't do any hiring, right? Well, they give you a thing, a form to fill out, yes, no, all that kind of stuff. Well, guess what? I passed about a 90 degree, 90% I passed. And now all I did was guess. I put yes, no, I put an arrow, I passed by 90%. They hired me. Went to 90 Church Street in New York to get sworn in. They swore me in. I had the duffel bag ready. We supposed to go to Great Lakes. I'm in line to go to Great Lakes. They called me out of line. Anschuetz. They called me out. Guy speaks German. Half English, half German. He says they made a mistake. They didn't give you a physical. What are we talking about here? They didn't give you a physical. Everybody else had a physical. You didn't. They gave me a physical. It turned out I had a hernia. Actually, it was not a hernia, undescended testicle. So this German officer the officer comes over, and he spoke German. He says, "Look, Bill, go home, get the operation, and we'll call you back." They never called me back, so I'm still in the Navy, I think.
So
I was sworn in. They never discharged me.
So you're probably the longest serving.
Well, I talked
Naval
to his brother, Jimmy. I said, "Jimmy, what should I do?" I tried to get a pass to go on the base, and he says, "Well, you can do a couple of things." He says, "You can go to the Senate and ask for back pay for all these years, or you can skip it and forget about it, because if you ask for all that money back, the boys are liable to come in out and put a bullet in your head." I took Jimmy's advice. Leave it alone. But I'm still in the Navy. I never got discharged.
So you don't end up in the Great Lakes, and
No, I wish I would have. I was looking forward to it.
so what do you end up doing instead if you don't end up in the Navy?
I came back to my aunt's, and I was doing odd jobs. I finally wound up with Lionel.
The
Choo-choo-choo-choo
toy
train.
trains, yeah, in Irvington.
Would you believe? Yeah, Hillside, Irvington, yeah. would you believe I could have bought a whole train set then for $14? Never bought one. Yeah, I know. That was the best job I had, I think.
Hillside. So how long did you work there? Do you remember?
I don't know. I don't remember how long, but it was a good job. I worked in the cafeteria washing dishes, right? And when somebody quit or died, you get a promotion because it was union, you know. So they promoted me. They gave me, I think I had 10 lunch wagons. They all through the plant. People that didn't want to come to the cafeteria to eat, they go to one of these wagons, and I had the same food on these wagons that they had in the cafeteria. So I was in charge of these 10. And finally, one of the chefs in the kitchen died. They wanted to put me in the kitchen as a chef. I said, oh no, I don't know anything about cooking. Don't put me here. I'll stay here. That was it.
So that's with Lionel.
Yeah. Then I wound up, I think my aunt called me then from Ohio. I don't know how she found out where I was, but she did, because as it was, they sent me from person to person, from one aunt to another. I made the rounds, and they pushed me all over the place. So my aunt in Ohio called me, asked me to come out there. And I went back there, and she got me a job in BMW. You know that name, don't you?
Sure.
That's where I worked, BMW. I welded, you know, the ship that's sitting down there in the Delaware, the United States.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I welded the boilers on it. Yep, Papecock and Wilcox come. And then made the steam engines and all that, you know.
So you pick up the welding again, because you were doing that in Germany.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
It came to me easy, yeah. Guess what? In Germany, we had no gas tanks. You know how you got your gas? They had a big pit like this, real deep, with carbide. That's what made your gas. Your hoses in there, you're making gas.
Hmm.
Yeah. Because the ventilation was way bad, and you're in these big tanks welding.
So at some point, at some point, you get involved with a taxi company.
Yeah, well, I worked for Lockjaw and Pipe too in Irvington, in East Orange. That was another welding place.
So you're still doing welding at that point, okay?
Yeah. And what you asked me?
I remember you at some point you were with a taxi company.
Oh yeah, well, I needed a job, and they were hiring, so I was striving. Then all of a sudden they asked me, they say, Bill, we're taking you off the road and you're going to be a dispatcher. So it was a big place, like, maybe like this, that fence. And it was U-shaped, okay? And it wasn't telephones, they were switchboard buttons, right? And the two guys sat in the middle there, dispatching, they rotate. And what they do, they take slip. Where are you? Where you going? What's your name? You know, boom. Then they toss the slip to either side, you know. You know, I had a whole pile of slips. We couldn't keep up. We all throw them out and we start all over. So finally, these two guys had heart attacks. They died from all the excitement, because they merged. East Orange Cab and Brooks Taxi, they merged. And there was one big outfit. We're not talking one taxi. We're talking, I think we had 100 to 200 taxis. So now these two guys died. Now guess who's elected to dispatch? Really?
So are you the only dispatcher? Or who's talking to the taxi cabs?
Me.
All 200? How do you?
No, then they weren't all out at one time.
Oh, okay, but
Oh, no.
but even so, even if it's like 10 or 20 or 30.
Now, I had a map with these golf things that they use, the sticks. You put the ball on top.
Yeah, sure.
When
Sort of like a mark the spot or whatever.
No, you put it in the ground and you put the ball on top of that stick.
Uh huh.
What do they call it, Willie?
Golf tee.
A tee, yeah.
Or golf tee.
So all these tees had a number, include a number on it. Whatever cab,
But that's showing where that cab is, right?
it showed me excited. If I had to send a cab over there to North Newark, and that told me it's safe for me to take some calls over there because I got the guy coming back. I know where he is, And I asked him, I said, Murphy, where are you now? He says, well, I'm on such and such a street. I said, okay, here's a call for you. And one guy, he refused to go over bridges. Well, I got a lot of New York calls. And this guy, one time he had a man, well-to-do, he paid up front to go over the bridge into New York. And this guy absolutely refused. He ditched the person right in the middle of the road.
Was he afraid of the bridge?
Yeah, he would not go over the bridge. Eddie, I've never forgotten him either. But then I wound up on the night dispatch because we couldn't get anybody to dispatch at night. So we closed upstairs, we closed that up at night, and I went downstairs in the office. And I don't need to tell you you were on dangerous ground. Because always somebody coming in, they come in force. They want to do you in. This one night, these 4 people come in, and I could see they wanted to do me in. So they tried the window, they tried the door, because everything is locked, and the window is bulletproof. So they looked, I think, for a stick or something to smash the window. Till I lifted my coat, and I saw my 38 strapped on me. That took care of that.
So you carried a gun?
Yeah. So
Wow.
they called the police station. And a friend of mine came over. He said, Bill, we had a call. He knew I carried a gun. He said, your friend, these people called up, say you're carrying a gun. I said, do you know what I carry?
But they were looking to break in and, yeah.
Well, he came. He had to follow through. He said, well, I know you got a gun, Bill. I was licensed, but not to carry it on the road.
Right.
All I would say, well, after I'm finished here, I'm going to go target shoot. Period. They took care of that.
So any stories that you can tell? Because I remember you saying that there was, and talking about the railroad, that there was some railroad executive that you used to bring into New York. Does that ring a bell?
Oh, do I remember them? Yeah. 2 of them. I forget the name. One lived up in, not in Glen Ridge. And the other guy lived on Park Avenue in East Orange. These guys used to go to the gay bars, and they spend half the night. Then they call a taxi and to pick them up. So I close up shop and tell each guy, go in the office and take yourself a call, whatever. And I took the limousine and I went to pick the guy up, and he keeps you sitting there and sitting there. The guy on Park Avenue, he was nice. I took him home, and you charge yourself a big tip. They charged everything to the railroad, Erie Railroad. charge, they charge that the gay bar, they charge the tip, everything to the railroad.
Yeah, how
Then
much?
this bum from Glen Ridge, I took him up, kept me waiting, loaded him up, and he was so drunk, he's giving me a hard time. He said he wanted to go over the Washington Bridge to go home. So I get ready to go over the Washington Bridge. And he's yelling, "Who told you to go this way?" I said, "You told me." I said, "You told me to go over the Washington Bridge, and that's what I'm doing." And he started cursing me and everything else. Well, guess what? I pulled in the middle of the bridge. I'd say, "Sir, get out of my cab. You're going to walk home." Oh, he said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Well, are you going to sit back there and shut up and let me do the driving? Or you want to get off here?" Well, he got back on, he kept quiet. I dropped him off in Glen Ridge. I went back to the office, and I no sooner get in there, because, it was the night dispatcher. I pick up the phone, it's him. He said, "Sir, I want to file a complaint. Somebody wanted to let me off at the Washington Bridge." He says, "Be sure he doesn't charge a tip." Hung up, I charged myself the tip. He was real. Everything, and he charged it too to the railroad. Everything he did. The limousine, the bar, everything charged to the Erie Railroad. You wonder why they broke?
I'm wondering how much money these guys were spending.
They spend it. They were every couple of nights they were hanging out in New York in the bar.
Really?
So I got tired of going there. I sent somebody else to pick him up. I let him use the limo and say, "Go and pick this guy up. I'll stay on the board. And call me if you have any trouble."
So at this point, you're.
That's why your railroad is broke.
Well, I wonder about that, because if you have a couple of guys like that, and there must be more that were doing
I'm sure
some
I'm
of the
sure
same
that-
stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure there were more. But these guys were top officials. They were presidents and vice presidents, whatever they were.
So they're big shots.
Big show. Oh, yeah. But the guy on Parker Avenue, he was always nice. He said, "Bill, charge yourself a big tip, and here's a little something extra for you." He always give me a 20 or whatever.
Which was a lot of money in those days.
Yes, yeah.
We're talking what? Talking about what year now?
He lived right around the corner from where I used to live. And my friend Orm, remember him, Billy? Orm Bird? He lived there, yeah. But he was really nice. But still, he charged to the Erie Railroad. I think it was Erie, yeah.
The Erie or the Erie Lackawanna?
No, Erie.
It was the Erie, okay. That would put it back in the late 50s.
Yeah. But I enjoyed the cab. Because I had it made there.
Somebody who disappears? What?
My uncle, I lived with my grandma, right?
This is where now we're talking?
In Germany.
In Germany.
Down, yeah, in the Eifel. And I don't know what happened to that man. He was a paralytic, right? He could eat good. He smoked cigarettes like crazy. And the only thing he had walking, he staggered, right? My grandma had to guide him, So this one day, these German guys in their SS uniform come to the house, and they said they had to take Nikolaus to the hospital to get him examined. Well, they took him to Andernach, a town called Andernach. That's where they have the mental institution, and they took him there. Well, the very next day they came back and told my grandma, your son died during the night. Did he die? He lived all these years. He was not a young man. He was about my father's age almost. So they took him to Underna and they did away with him. He never came back home.
Yeah, so you believe it was...
Oh, yeah, they
yeah.
did. Yeah. I think, I don't remember if I confronted my grandma about it. And she told me not to mention it anymore, so I didn't. This is the first time talking about it.
So it sounds like Grandma didn't want to, like, she knew stuff.
She never wanted to get involved in nothing.
Hmm.
When the teacher beat me, she never helped.
I mean, what could they have done? I mean, could they have complained, or what do you think they should have done, I guess is the question.
Well, if Hitler was responsible, there was nothing you would have done. Because if you would have got nasty about it, you would have disappeared too.
Hmm.
You know, there was no... A lot of Nazis took off to Brazil because the Brazilians had no qualms with Nazis.
Hmm. Well, that much we know is true. I mean, a lot of...
That's what
I mean, there were Nazis who ended up in the United States. I mean, we know that as well.
Yeah.
And,
well, that one Nazi, the Big Rick, he was... the Jews found him in Brazil. Remember, they kidnapped him? What was his name again?
oh, not Eichmann. No.
Yeah, it was Eichmann.
Was it Eichmann?
What was Eichmann? He was hiding, and the Jews kidnapped him. They put him on trial in Jerusalem. I mean, they had all... He was safe till he got careless in the end.
Well, there's some, you know... I mean, it's quite amazing to think back, I mean, because you were there during that time, but it's amazing to think back that there were these people that... They weren't just bad people. I mean, they were really evil.
Evil. They were outright evil. You know, evil. And I think Hitler was only the go-in-between. The bad one was, what's his name there? Himmler.
Himmler. Okay.
Himmler.
Heinrich Himmler.
Heinrich Himmler. He was egotistical. You know how they caught him? I told Billy on the way up. You know how they caught him? They had a bunch of prisoners in back of the truck. And his American guard, he goes by, he looks in the truck, and he spots these real fancy boots. Himmler, he did not want to part with his boots. So the guard went in there, he uncovered the blanket, looked and it was Himmler. He didn't want to part with his boots. Why didn't he put some old boots on?
He was a chicken farmer, if I remember right.
Yeah, he was nothing wrong.
Yeah, well,
But he hated to part with them fancy boots. Would he put a pair of old boots on, he would have been safe.
well, of course, you wouldn't have expected someone would have been that observant, perhaps, but...
Heinrich Himmler. He was nasty. He was the nastiest of nasty.
So what about your friend Morris? How does he... Because I know I met Morris back in the early days.
Oh, did you meet him?
Yeah, I met him. He was... He used to hang out at your house. I know that in East Orange.
Yeah.
And I'd run into him every so often. He'd be there, and
He messed me up with Cassie. He's supposed to, when Cassie came back from Germany, he's supposed to watch her.
This is your daughter?
She went to Clifford Sky, and he went East Orange High, and he took her out of school. They used to go to New York. And the school teacher, the principal, called me up. He said, "Your daughter hasn't been in school, where's she?" I said, "She's supposed to be in school." Well, I called Morris. I said, "Where is she?" Well, when we lived in Montreux, he pulled all kinds of shenanigans up there. My landlady used to call me home at work. I had to pay a guy double time and a half to come home. And I'd go home, there'd be all kinds of parties going on and all kinds of stuff. This one day she calls me, she said, "Bill, you better come home because all the lights are out in your home and there's all kinds of cars there, you know." So I think I shut the boilers down, which I wasn't supposed to. I made sure there was nothing cooking downstairs. So I ran home, which wasn't too far. All the lights were out. So I had a flashlight and I'd go hit for the light. They had all the lights disconnected and everybody, about 20 people in there, all laying naked on the floor.
What was it, some sort of loving, or was it
I guess so.
an orgy, or what?
Yeah, who knows. Then this one time, I come home in Montreux, and I came in, it was real quiet in the house. I knew Cassie was home, Mars was there. I go upstairs to my bedroom, and here's Cassie and Mars sitting in the bathtub, right? I go to my counter, get my 38 out. I said, "Morris, you want to die in the top or you want to come out and die?" He says, "We weren't doing anything." I said, "Sure you weren't." He said, "It was Cassie." "Yeah, I know it was Cassie, but you did what she told you to do." I said, "I can shoot you now in the top or shoot you outside."
This is news to me about Morris, but
I have more trouble with him, Chuck.
now this man lives to be what? He was like, how old was he when he died?
I think he was 100. I think he was. And the worst thing he ever did to me, my company, the people that I used to order stuff from, they used to give you a bottle of booze at Christmas time, you know. And I just had it sitting there. You know what he did? They poured out all the booze. They were careful with the label. He peed in all the bottles, and then he sealed the seal back on. And I offered somebody a drink. He said, "What are you giving me?"
So this is the side of Morris I didn't know about.
He's supposed to be my friend.
So when I first, I think when I first met you, you were working at Beecham. Now you had
Where?
a Beecham.
Oh, Smith Klein Beecham. Yeah.
So yeah, so Smith Klein Beecham.
Yeah.
Over in Parsippany, right?
Yeah, boilers.
Boilers. Yeah, you had a Black Seal or
Yeah,
what?
Black Seal in charge.
So you had several skills you could call upon. You welding,
Yeah,
boilers.
I still have my license for boilers. I renew it every so year. It's always good, I think, for 3 or 4 years. I still have it.
So what do you need to know in order to run a boiler? I mean, how many boilers are out there now? Not that you have any interest in.
Yeah, I could still run it.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. Depending what make they you know.
So what question? I haven't referred to my questions, but I think I've covered quite a bit of what I would have wanted to ask you.
I think you did. You covered more than that.
I'm going real quickly through this.
Billy can't take it anymore.
Where's your? This is an off-the-wall question, but you, from what I remember, one time you told me that you were, I guess, I don't know if you were a field hand in Germany, but did you handle or harvest rice or hops or I'm trying to.
Oh, hops, yeah. Well, the schools, you don't go play in the summer because all the men were at war. You know, there was no men. They put me to this German farm picking hops.
What, for beer or?
You sit out in the hot air with this long thing, you pull a stalk down, you sit there. From the heat, I had so many nosebleeds picking that crazy hops. And they add insult to injury. They had no place to put you to sleep. You know what is? You slept up in the barn where they used to dry the hops. You slept with the hops. And up to this day, when I see a beer, I go crazy. I smell the hops.
So that's why you don't like beer.
I hate beer. I hate beer. And hops more so. And wine is about the same thing.
Well,
Squish.
that's grapes, of course, but
Yeah, yeah.
I think I'm looking down the.
Yeah, the hops. Oh man, you're bringing back memories.
I got a question for you. You're a big fan of Coca. Speaking of Coca-Cola, how did you get into? Because you actually collected stuff.
Good question. I just had that little truck in my hand. Somebody gave me an old-fashioned Coca-Cola truck. I don't know, was it Jimmy or Billy? Somebody gave it to me. It was a little old Coca-Cola truck. And that started. Everybody sort of collect Coca-Cola. And I didn't.
You didn't?
But everybody bought me Coca-Cola stuff. Well, Billy and his brother, they bought me the big pool table lamps. Remember them?
Yes.
I have two of them in my house. 2 pool table lamps. The whole house is Coca-Cola.
So it isn't originally your idea, but did you kind of like follow?
I just followed through on that little truck because I thought it was so neat, you know. And the next thing you know, everybody they saw that little truck, they saw that collect Coca-Cola. Well, I took it, whatever they gave me. Then I started buying some stuff too, you know, and it went on and on.
But you also drink Coca-Cola or Coke, you know.
Oh, did I ever?
And you're a coffee drinker too, right? You're
Coffee and Coke.
okay. So lots of caffeine or
Lots of caffeine. my doctor, you know what he said to me if he went for the exam some months ago? He asked me what I did. I said coffee and Coke. He says, so you got to stop drinking all that stuff, coffee and Coke. I said, doctor, you're telling me to give it up. I'm 93 years old. You want me to give it up now? I said, you know, am I going to give it up now, Chuck?
no, it doesn't make any sense, does it?
Wouldn't make any sense at all, no. No, I'm even into ginger ale because they talked me into it.
But do you like ginger ale? I mean, or do you prefer Coke?
I prefer the Coke.
You prefer the Coke?
It's sweeter.
Yeah. No, you have a sweet tooth. I remember from Bill was
I
telling me a while
rock
back.
candy.
Yeah, that you like the rock candy.
Yeah, when we go to Columbus to the flea market, there's a lady that's from the Amish. She has counters and counters full of rock candy. Well, we go to the rock candy, mostly $13, $14. She gives them to me for 10. So every so often, when I'm out, I buy a box of candy, rock candy. That's my favorite.
And that's only sugar and water, isn't it? Basically.
That's all. You can make it here at home. Get a string and tie it up and whatever. I don't know how to do it, but that's how they do it.
I think you have to put a bunch of sugar and water. I think you have to boil it or something, and then
Yeah, let it petrify or something.
right, and it kind of gives you that
Yeah, it
crystal type of
yeah.
thing on the
And they hang it on the string.
yeah. And then you can you kind of suck on it or whatever, and
Yeah.
you can yeah.
Then I like marzipan.
What?
Marzipan.
Mutts?
I just bought about 15 of them at the Liddy's we go to. It's almond paste.
Almond paste.
Almond, they make a paste out of it.
So what do you put it on bread or something, or what do you do with it?
No, it's just they make a candy out of it.
Oh, okay. Just
Well, what do you say?
I'm just about out of questions, I think. And I think the last couple of questions would be like, how's your German? I mean,
Oh, perfect.
how do you keep it? How do you I've talked to people in not Germans, but I remember years ago talking to a Frenchman at a party, and he had been in the U.S. for a few years at that time, and I remember talking to him and asking, well, how do you does your French get rusty? He said, actually, it does. He said, if you don't use it.
No.
And he was a native speaker. But what about you? What do you?
Well, I had a friend here. He died not too long ago. Him and I spoke German all the time.
Oh, so you kept it going.
Yeah. And I called my niece in Germany. I talked to her in German.
So you still have folks over on the other side.
Yeah, my nephews. Yeah.
When's the last time you were over there?
What was that, 54, Billy?
Oh, you haven't been back in a long time.
Yeah, oh yeah. I was actually going to stay there. But
In
wherever
54?
I got a job, everybody think that I didn't have a work permit. And my cousin, he was in charge of the work permits. I went up there to get a job. He said, Bill, look, he had a stack of papers like that. I said, well, Carl, how about pull me from the bottom, put me on the top? He said, I can't do that. Well, they hired me in a bakery. These big round loaves that you put them in a bag or something. And then somebody think that I was working without a permit. Well, that took care of that. Then my other cousin hired me in a contracting job. He put me on a bulldozer. They were building a new house somewhere. And he says, I want you to do the dirt from here to there and whatever there. Guess what? I went close to the house and the dirt gave away. And I wrecked the whole corner of the new house. That took care of that job. My jobs didn't last too long.
So this is Germany?
Yeah.
You were in Germany. So you go back in 54?
I think it was 54.
You
I
go-
had to leave because the school here where Billy lives, the school there. The principal, they called me in because every day I had no wife, and I had a babysitter, and every day they'd be late. So every day I'd be late with Cassie bringing her to school. Well, they called me into the office, and he said, well, Mr. Anschuetz, if you come late one more time, we're going to have to take your daughter away and put her in a home or whatever. Well, I already suspected that. I had my passport ready, and my friend there, Owen, we just talked about him. He took me to the ship. I got on the ship with Cassie and took her to, my sister was going to take care of her. When I came back, I couldn't bring her back because I came back through the army. You know, it was army troops. And I was stationed there. They kept me at the army base till the ship came in. No, the plane. That was a plane. Yeah, that was it. I had to leave Cassie behind. And she came back. Oh, what was she, about 15 or so?
Well, how old is she in 1954?
I think she was about 4 or 5.
So she's over there for another 10 years then.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, what do you think?
What do you do now? I mean,
Not too much.
You're retired. When did you actually retire? How long have you been retired?
87 was it?
35 years.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a long time.
And then they messed me up on my pension. All these crooks that worked for SmithKline Beeching, they all got shafted finally. They stole the place blind. One guy, he was manager, and he wanted to oust me, make me retire. And he built a house in the Poconos with all stolen lumber from somebody call me? With all stolen lumber, fancy tools, nails. He built a whole house up there in the Poconos with stolen merchandise from Beecher. And he had me and my little truck go and pick up the lumber in Morristown.
So you'd pick it up and then you deliver it to...
I do have good best.
Well, then we're done. I appreciate you...
Well, I gave you what I had. I answered you what I could.
You did a good job.
Well, thank you. Maybe someday we'll do some more.
Well, okay.
Who knows what I come up with.
Hi, I'm Chuck Walsh, and I'm your host on the Lackawanna Cutoff channel and the interviewer for Bill Anschuetz. Now, if you're a regular subscriber or viewer of the Lackawanna Cutoff channel, you're probably wondering, why is this not a video about the Lackawanna Cutoff? Well, this is not the first video that I've done that's not about the Lackawanna Cutoff, and it won't be the last. But I guarantee you there will be more videos about the Lackawanna Cutoff. But the reason why I wanted to do this video became apparent about a year ago. I've known Bill Anschuetz. I met him almost a half century ago. And it's quite an interesting story about the snippets I've gotten over time, which you would have heard bits and pieces of from my questions, that I, in a sense, already knew some of the answers because I'd heard the stories before. But it wasn't until about a year ago that it all kind of came together. When I talked to Bill, I had the opportunity at a picnic over here last year to basically get a story that flowed, that once I heard it, it screamed out that, my gosh, and at that point I had been doing the Lackawanna cutoff videos with Larissa for several years already, that wow, this is a real opportunity to hear from someone who was there in Nazi Germany, who grew up in Nazi Germany. And it was an American. I mean, how many people could possibly fit that particular description? How many people were born in the U.S.? Granted, Bill was only an infant when he left, but still he was an American, and that American citizenship is going to help him. That'll get him out of Germany alive, which unfortunately for the rest of his family, except for his younger sister, won't happen. So it's quite clear that the decision for the family to move to Germany, or back to Germany, because Bill's mother and father were originally from Germany but had moved to the U.S., that was an enormous mistake. Nevertheless, I'm so happy that we're able to interview Bill. He's one of the last of his generation that can tell us firsthand, where you don't have to look into a history book, you don't have to look online to get the answer. He was there. He knew what it was like. And so, certainly I want to interview him again, and he seems to be quite open. He was the one who brought up the subject. So I'm looking forward to interviewing him again. There's some additional questions I'd like to ask him, maybe some follow-ups on some of the things he talked about. And even after the interview was over, he did start telling stories again over the dinner table. And one in particular I'd like to hear again is about him finding a purse with $30,000 in cash in it. And this is before I met him, so $30,000 in cash in those days was an enormous amount of money, and quite a story. So I certainly hope that you've enjoyed this video, which was not about the Lackawanna cutoff, but that you allow for that, and that this is I think is a very interesting subject to cover from a first-hand source. Not too many of those who are around anymore to tell this story. So that's certainly one of the main reasons why I wanted to do this video. So look forward to other videos, including the one, hopefully, a follow-up with Bill Anschuetz on the Lackawanna Cutoff channel.